such a tough and big decision to say, I'm in my comfort zone locally, I'm doing so well, you're probably starting to make a little bit of money, you recognize a bit of success. How do you jump over that hurdle and make the decision to take the next step to go overseas, where in reality, and no offense, obviously, you're a no one? Zach Muscat, Malta's most decorated footballers. At the age of 21, he had already won every local trophy, but he made the decision to push himself further and leave the island to pursue more in his career. He's also a holistic healthcare coach, looking at the root causes of what causes illness and why it happens.
The trigger was losing a couple of family members to the traditional medicine we're unfortunately all used to. There is the place for medicine, there is the place for the GP, there is the place for everyone. I think it needs to be more of an integrative approach. The system as it is should be scrapped.
What kind of changes would you really suggest that could realistically make a big difference today for people to start grabbing the low-hanging fruits?
I think if you really look at the basics and change the way you breathe, the benefits which trickle down are huge. We all have the power to use the breath and like a power workout for your lungs. Because I'm going to be training a muscle which you don't train, you just use. So we use our cardiovascular system on the daily, but we don't train it. For me, there's also an extra part. It also comes indirectly in the community bracket, but it's...
Welcome back to Rise, Recover, Repeat, brought to you by Rise Physio Plus. We're here to help you build a better version of yourself. We're looking to share expert tips, real-life experiences, and more or less how to build a better version of yourself. Today's guest is one of Malta's most decorated footballers. At the age of 21, he had already won every local trophy, every possible competition, but he made the decision to push himself further and leave the island to pursue more in his career. He's also a holistic healthcare coach, looking at the root causes of what causes illness and why it happens. Hi everyone, I'm Matteo Camilleri, the founder of Rise Physiotherapy. Rise, Recover, Repeat series is all about building a healthier and stronger you. We'll do our best to bring interesting content, speak with professionals in the industry. I'm super excited to have Zach Muscat with us. Welcome, Zach. How are you?
Thank you for providing such a platform and for inviting me here. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Zach, as is the way with our episodes and our podcasts, I'd love to start with one of the hardest questions. And that over here is that most people are burning out. That's high performers, athletes. Is there a better way? Is there a way where we can push ourselves, get to peak performance, but not have this constant feeling like we're doing too much, we're always exhausted, and we just can't feel well?
You're talking to the first guy who's gone through cycles of burning out. So it's happened to me quite a few times. And yes, I think it just depends on the goal, the focus which we're aiming everything at, and also looking within and understanding ourselves, our aim, but also our body, because at the end of the day, body talks.
Of course.
So understanding, nowadays there are so many metrics which you can go to, but that gut feeling or that inward looking and inward vision where, listen, yeah, I really want to push, but today my body isn't giving me that. But then you also have to balance it with like, I'm tired today, but I want to push even more so I can increase that adaptation.
Of course.
It's a bit of an understanding. So you might go through injuries, you might go through mistakes, but at the end of the day, that's how you're going to learn.
Of course. And for those that don't know you, what are you all about? So we know everyone knows you're a footballer, you're a fantastic footballer, you've done a lot with the national team, with a lot of clubs, both locally and overseas. But how would you, obviously a hard question, but define yourself? What do you do nowadays?
That's a very hard question. And I know, I guess.
Do any of us?
I guess it's when you're on a platform like this and you get asked these questions where you actually properly think about them. I've been associated with football all my life, but I'd like to sort of start discovering the second version of myself. And because of certain difficulties which I've gone through, difficulties which I've seen in my family, unfortunately losses, I've tried to follow something where, listen, I've always been some sort of a health freak. Describe it however you'd like. Going back, I now understand a bit of why that happened, but there was always football. Coincidentally, I studied, or I went into sixth form studying computer science. I got out of sixth form and I went into university studying architecture, interior design then. But then I went abroad, playing football abroad, and the architecture and interior design wasn't
What you wanted
doable.
to do. Mm-hmm.
I had worked a bit in architecture in Portugal as well with a firm over there, but I couldn't balance that. But I've always needed studies. I've always seen that when I am studying some sort of online course, some sort of reading, my performance in football is elevated.
Okay.
So I've
Okay.
also always seen this correlation, which has pushed me to discover more and try and do things which I like, learn, study, because I get the physical um, benefits from that as well.
Okay. Okay.
And then I've gone into something where I can use today and continue to use in the future, which is basically a holistic health approach. I've gone into holistic health, as you said, so I'm a holistic health coach, but I specialize in functional breathwork, which comes from a point of wanting to give access to everyone. We all have the breath. We all have the power to use the breath, and it's something which is free. You don't need any equipment, and it's some sort of information or input which I can give to anyone and make it accessible to everyone. But now I'm also studying functional nutrition. I've got a few more months in my course, and that's the next step for me to complete the circle. I mean, it's never actually complete because you always continue studying,
Yes, of course.
especially when it comes into this realm. But I want to complete the functional health circle and be able to give a solid product to anyone who's seeking help with any sort of disease, with any sort of symptoms, which takes away that 100% functionality in everyday life.
Of course. And the ability to perform once again, like we said, because that's obviously going to be a big part of it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to help the majority of people, and what I do helps anyone from a desk job to an elite athlete.
Of course.
The elite athlete is where I'd like to put my
Explore
focus,
and
because
focus.
I am that, and that's where my experience comes in, so I can give a better input there.
Of course. So just to explore a little bit more with regards to your football career,
Yeah.
it must have been such a tough and big decision to say, I'm in my comfort zone locally, I'm doing so well, you're probably starting to make a little bit of money, recognize a bit of success, maybe see kind of positive input from your peers, everyone's saying, Zach Muscat, so good. How do you jump over that hurdle and make the decision to take the next step to go overseas where in reality, and no offense, obviously you're a no one at that point, no one knows who you are.
Yeah.
How do you make that decision? It's I think it's such a almost a metaphor for how we should push ourselves in life, that you're
Yeah.
in that comfort zone, there's always the next step.
The comfort zone is something I've always fought against, actually, because I've always grown outside of the comfort zone, and the first few times that's happened, that was in a local scenario. I just saw the growth, and I said I want to keep doing this. And every time there's a scenario where I'm going to go back to my comfort zone, go back to something I know, I'm also not going to learn there. So I'm someone who wants to push myself and try and increase that 1% every single day. Try to find that extra information which I didn't have yesterday. And it was hard in leaving the friends, leaving the family, leaving whatever you know, and going into the unknown, because my first jump was the unknown. But I think internally with myself, I think it was pretty easy because I just was ready for another challenge. I'm someone who's been there, done that, next step.
Okay.
So I think that was, from that aspect, it was pretty easy. Just where I had to go was the question mark.
Okay. And I guess now looking back, having the benefit of foresight, it's where you grew the most. No, had you stayed local and not made that push, you wouldn't have grown. You wouldn't have changed as an individual and the person. So obviously,
Definitely
I
not.
need your answer for that, but that's what I would assume.
Definitely not. The amount of growth I've seen, not just after leaving Malta, but after leaving Italy to go to Portugal, after leaving Portugal and the question mark, then to go to Turkey. Every single step I've made, every single jump I've made, even within the countries, there's been growth in every single way. and in so many ways I didn't expect.
And I guess a journey like this comes with a lot of low points. I guess when people look back and they say, wow, what a career, what a life, they just see the positives, they see the upsides of things. But obviously, the only reason you can get to where you are and get to a point of success is because you fought through the low points. And one of the questions I like to ask high achievers like yourself is, what do you do to get out of those low points? For example, when we're preparing for this conversation, you mentioned that you're now currently a free agent, which means that must come with a lot of uncertainty for people who don't understand what that is. It means you currently don't have a contractual agreement with a club to play football, and that is your career at the end of the day. How do you pull through these moments? What do you focus on? What do you do? What's your safe space that gets you out of them?
I think personally it's always been distraction. So distracting myself with something else until the right thing comes along. But that distraction is also productive.
Okay.
So I'm currently, like you said, a free agent, jobless. That is exactly the word.
Wow.
So you're looking for your next job, but you're also depending on other people to find that next job. So it's not a scenario where I'm knocking door to door, putting my CV, going for meetings. I can't do that. I have an agent.
Okay.
Not I can't do that. I have to do that. I literally have to be sending emails here and there, and clubs don't receive it direct from players. It has to be an agent.
Okay.
So you're just basically waiting for information from another person, playing telephone because the club would say something to the agent tells you something else, and then you have to process it in your own way. But there's always been some form of distraction for me. That's my way of coping while I'm still pushing and working with the training, So whether it's actually training in a certain way, different sports, extra studying. At the moment, I'm putting the final stamp on my breathwork practice, focusing on giving the best to the clients I have at the moment, until that next job which feels right comes along.
Okay. That's actually quite interesting. So you only focus on the things you can have a positive effect on. So everything outside of kind of this goldfish bowl almost,
Yeah.
there are things you can't touch and you try your best not to worry about them.
Exactly.
And to create that net, you distract yourself because I think perhaps distraction has a negative connotation, but in reality, you're pushing on things that you can actually have a positive impact on and that you're changing your life and the life of those around you with.
course.
So it's
You can
actually a very
control.
interesting concept because I would have always thought that distraction is the wrong way to go about things, but the way you've put it really makes a lot of sense.
It's a distraction until you can control that section again.
Of course, of
So
your
sort of
life.
a segmentation of things which you can and can't control. You focus on what you can control, and then once what you can't control starts to move into what you can control, you focus back on it.
Cool. I'm just going to perhaps take you to a bit of a different topic and some like a different area of conversation. So one of the big reasons I wanted to speak to you, and I think that you're a very interesting human from this point of view, is the way you look after your body. Okay. Now, I've always believed that there's things available for the elite or for pro athletes, but we should have a way to filter those down to everybody. Okay. And I think having these kinds of conversations can start to unlock some thoughts and ideas for people on what should be filtering down into their lives.
Yes.
Now, we've had conversations about red light therapy, about hyperbaric oxygen therapy, recovery boots, a whole range of things that's almost science fiction.
Yeah.
My question to you is, if you really think about this stuff, are they things which are cool to have, look good on Instagram, or do you really feel that they can make a difference to yourself and to the viewers listening to this conversation?
Okay, so in my opinion, they have everything you've mentioned has a huge effect on elite performance if used correctly. Because there's a lot of information out there. It's not all correct, and it's not all individualized.
Mm-hmm.
So you've mentioned hyperbaric oxygen chamber. I've got one in my bedroom. So, so that's the range of where we are. In my terms, I've always looked at the summer window where I'm out of contract. Let me add something else to my bedroom, to my
Routine
house, to my
almost. Of
routine, to
course.
my space, to my recovery protocol. I have a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. I have a red light therapy. I have an ice bath. I've just gotten a sauna. I have all these things because I've read, studied, understood their benefits. But if you have these and then the basics and the foundation is not worked around, they affect these
Add-ons.
add-ons, which cost quite a lot of money, have really minimal effect.
Of course. I love what you just said, because it is, without obviously wanting to guide you, and if what I'm saying you don't agree with, please let me know. But I've always talked about the importance of the 80% first. So if your training isn't correct, if you're not sleeping well, and if your nutrition isn't on point, all these are, you're just trying to plug a hole, which you're never going to get better with. It's the same as trying to throw caffeine after a terrible night of sleep, you know? So for example, we do offer these things at Rise Fitness as well, sauna, ice baths, and other recovery modalities. But the constant conversation we have with our members and people that want to work with us is, you need to look after the basics first. You know, if you're not training well, not eating well, not sleeping well, focus on those first. It's a waste of a half an hour to be in the sauna or in the ice bath. Add it to your sleep. Optimize the quality of your sleep. This is where the research base is, and we know that that's actually what's going to make you feel better and not burn out. You know?
Exactly. And that is the concept of why I've always looked at the next thing I can give or the next thing I can do to provide something to everyone. So I have all these gadgets, but I know that not everyone can afford these gadgets, and I know not everyone can have them at their house, not everyone can pay for sessions for them. So what is something which I can give and provide from a holistic health point of view, which everyone can benefit from? And that is why I started in health and why I've gone into nutrition. But in nutrition, I can impact your day if you eat 3, 4, 5, if you snack 6, 7 times a day, okay? But we breathe on average around 20,000 times a day. So if I can impact that single repetitive thing, meaning I impact your day 20,000 times, imagine what that can do.
Just the sheer reps that you're going to attain over a week, a month, a year is phenomenal.
Exactly. So if you can turn the switch on that, then you can focus on the next step. I always have this sort of analogy of having like 10 doors for you to get to your goal. And you can have the keys for the functional health, and you can be eating correctly, and you can be I don't know, training correctly and trying to do all the recovery efforts. But if that first door, for example, is sleep, or if that first door is sleep apnea, so you're not even sleeping correctly, and you never actually open that door, you're never going to actually take that step forward, because you've opened door 3, door 7, door 8, door 5, but door 1 is still closed.
That is your big block at that point in time. That's what you need to unlock. And how would you normally unlock that? I mean, it must come through conversations, through understanding, because I work in a field where you constantly need to diagnose, understand, see what's happening. And I find it such a challenge. So I'd love to hear your input on that.
I think I'm a bit green, so I do admit I'm a bit green in these things when it comes to other clients, and that is where I need to improve. When it comes to myself, because I always like to say that, listen, I've done this, but I also know that I have done this, and this has worked for me. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Of course.
So I need to understand my client, and sometimes it does come to trial and error. It comes through failure.
Of course.
If you don't fail, you don't learn.
Of course. But that's interesting what you've brought up. So if I were to ask you to really tell me what has worked for you, you've been an elite athlete for a long period of time.
Yeah.
How have you stayed at that level? What has made a real difference for you? Because I believe this is where we learn.
Yeah. I think that my first unlocking of the door was nutrition, and focusing on clean nutrition, taking away inflammatory foods. I've always, to a certain extent, been focused on healthy food, but it's always been healthy food from the information I've been given. Doesn't mean that it's healthy food for me, doesn't mean that it's healthy food in general. But it's always from the information I've gotten, okay, this is healthy. And that I think is where people maybe go astray, because they've seen a TikTok video, they've seen something on Instagram, they've seen a reel, a video, a post, and they've put that as their focus. It could be true for the people they've tested, for the people they've had under trial, but maybe not for you.
Okay.
And before I said, and I understand why I've always been a sort of health freak. And it comes also through the fact that my parents, when I was a young kid, had a certain focus. So they tell me, like, when other kids we're all together and kids are eating sweets here and there. I have sort of like some sort of cereal packet or granola or
Okay.
carrots.
Okay. Okay.
So it does have connotations to your childhood, to what you've been taught at an earlier age, but then it depends on how much you go into it.
Okay.
But that was the first thing. I think the second door which I unlocked, and I think which was the greatest thing, was my relationship with sleep. Sleep has been the number one focus I've had, and I changed around my schedules. I changed around my meetings, dates, everything depending on
Sleep.
sleep.
And it's what needs to come first, in your opinion. So you make sure that you're sleeping a certain amount of hours, you optimize your sleep quality.
Yes. At the end of the day, you sleep for a third of your day if
More
you
or
sleep
less.
around 8 hours. Not everyone needs 8 hours. Some people need less. There depends on the genetic predisposition as well. But we sleep for a lot of time, and if it isn't so important for us to sleep that much, it would have been quite a big screw up by evolution.
Of course, of course.
And I don't think it's something which we've maintained for over such a long period of time, just by accident.
No, of course. And I mean, I think it's still so undervalued by people. I constantly get clients coming in who are injured and they're still not focused on their sleep. And it's the first thing that, in my opinion, needs to be fixed. And I'm definitely not someone you need to convince about sleep. I mean, you do, unfortunately, it does mean needing to prioritize like everything else. And
Yes.
people will tell you they don't have time to exercise or they don't have time to sleep. And I think the reality is we need to sit down and just think a little bit about, what am I prioritizing?
Yeah.
Of course, it's not easy for everyone. There's challenges. There's people who work night shifts. There's people who have young kids, so it's always a challenge. But what can I do to optimize, to prioritize, to help a little bit more? So
I think you've mentioned something which is very important. I think the majority of people can prioritize sleep. There is a niche where it's very hard, like you said, the shift workers. That is incredibly hard to work around. There are different solutions depending on the person, but the majority of people can prioritize sleep. And I think it's sometimes not just about I cannot because I have X, Y, and Z. I think it's just the fact that they haven't ventured into that realm of getting the benefits of sleep. Once they taste the benefits of sleep, they understand the energy they will have during the day. They understand the recovery that provides. I don't think that they will go back.
yeah, I
And they
agree
will
with you.
make time for sleep.
I agree with you. I think that's one of the big things. So when you taste the benefits, how well your body can work, this kind of structure we have can work when we're eating well, sleeping well, and exercising. I mean, you feel terrible when you don't. You kind of know the difference, and then once you taste that difference,
Yes.
that's so difficult.
You almost feel like you're failing your body once you
Totally.
go
You get
back.
disappointed in yourself.
Exactly,
almost.
exactly.
I don't know how
exactly,
healthy this is now. I'm
exactly,
going the other way, but
exactly. But the thing is that your body is so powerful, and once you clear the clouds, the amount of strength, the amount of energy, the amount of we're not meant to have crashes during the day. The body isn't designed for this body is designed to be able to give you so much. And once you clear the clouds and you clear the terrain, I think people will be hooked on the amount of the body can actually give back.
Yeah. So another topic you mentioned, which I think is super interesting, is this individualization of your nutrition, of what you eat. I found it unbelievable that when you go to national team training camps, you take your own food. So when we met for a coffee lately, you actually mentioned that you have a car full of food because you're going to national team training and you take your own food.
Yeah.
First of all, people must really pick on you for
Yes.
that, which I'm sure you're used
Yes.
to. But more importantly, what does that mean? How did you get to that point where you understand and know what you should be eating? Not just healthy as a generic term, but healthy for Zach, optimal for Zach.
Yeah, and I think that like you're saying, it's healthy for me. I think inherently there is no food which is healthy, because something can be healthy for me and it can be creating an allergy for you.
Wow, okay.
Okay, so healthy comes from what I've studied, from what I've experienced. My definition of healthy is something your body is used to eating or used to consuming and knows how to process. If you're giving something strange for your body, whatever it is not going to know how to process it, and it's going to create some sort of barrier. So that means that it comes through trial and error. If I eat something and I feel good the next day, If I don't have any crashes on the same day, that's good. Tick the box, move on.
Okay.
Okay, so it comes from that point of view. Yes, I mean, I've been with the national team now for probably like 14, 15 years. And I still get picked on like it's the first time. Every camp, it's always like the same thing. And
Yes, I've been in that setup in rugby, and
yeah,
I know how how tough it is to
I
take
go,
care of stuff.
I roll into a national team. You see these videos of other people coming in with their drips for national team. For me, it's like one luggage of the national team clothes and one luggage of food. So and but it's something which I feel benefits me. Also, you don't have control of what other people cook with in terms of cooking oils, which could create some sort of inflammation, and then that takes away from your performance.
Of
And
course.
if you value your performance, you take the step back and you say, okay, let's back it up here. What can improve my performance? And you start seeing all the avenues. And if you don't tackle the nutrition part, no one else will for you, and you'll see negative percentages in that area, which at the end of the day is your career, it's your job, it's
Of
no one else is
course.
going to take care of those things for you.
I value what you're saying so much, and I really try to speak about this. At the end of the day, the only thing we can give out is what we have inside us. So if your energy isn't positive, whatever energy means, but that
Yeah.
feeling of being able to give, if you don't have that inside you, it's impossible to have a good conversation, to
Exactly.
have good relationships, to have good work, depending what your work, no matter what your work is, if it's performing as an athlete or performing in the office. So I think that there's so much value to learning about how this entity we live in works and how to make it better.
Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned there, which I'd like to explore, is this things of symptoms related to what you consume. So I've always been very curious about this personally. So typically, if you eat something that doesn't agree with you or is not optimal for you, would you expect to see something in the next 24 hours? Is it within the next week? How do we know what's causing? How do we create this kind of causality? How do we know what is causing a problem? That's always been a tough one for me.
I think it comes from a place of trial, error, elimination. Okay, so like I mentioned before, you need to clear away the clouds, because if you eat an apple and then after you feel sick or you feel some sort of brain fog, it's the apple. But if you eat a plate of, I don't know, pasta bolognese, okay, you've got the pasta, you've got the tomato sauce, if there's carrots, there's peas, there's onions, there's garlic, which of those is making the creating the barrier for me for that 100% performance? You have to take away the ingredients one by one, still
Okay.
take that and understand. Now it depends on how great the barrier is caused, because I'm not going to tell you, listen, it's making me sick, and then try again the same thing. Just take it down to one ingredient and see where that comes from, because it's the only way you're going to be able to move forward is by moving back, take a different perspective, and then be able to progress. Because you can't just you can take off one ingredient, try it again, and you'll be lucky and you'll understand. But there has to be that some sort of trial and error and experimentation.
Okay, okay. I mean, yep, I think that's challenging. Obviously, there are elimination diets which people can try if they're really having issues and they want to figure
Definitely,
out. And I
definitely.
think that's the path that you're going down, what you're
Exactly.
describing. But yes, and this also links to something I wanted to ask you when it comes to this kind of performance of the elite athlete and how to make yourself a better version of yourself. So we've mentioned a couple of different things. We've mentioned sleep optimization, nutrition, hyperbaric chambers. We've mentioned the bottom and the top.
Yeah.
I really like to bring this down to our viewers and for people to understand what they should be doing and how they should be doing it. Are these things that we've mentioned realistic for the normal individual? So a person who works a 9 to 5 job, attends the gym 3 to 4 times a week, what kind of changes would you really suggest that could realistically make a big difference today for people to start grabbing the low-hanging fruits?
I don't want this to be like some sort of advert, but I think if you really look at the basics and change the way you breathe, the the benefits which trickle down, they're huge. They're huge.
Okay, okay, okay.
So myself as an elite athlete, thinking I've gotten the lockdown on everything there has to be with recovery, fitness, the moment I started focusing on my breath, the moment I started to use my breath, because it's not just listen, breathe in and out through the nose. There is a use of breath holds. So first thing I tell either my clients or classes I have It's like if you think you've come here today to relax and breathe and get into some flow state, so I'm sorry, this is going to be a gym for your lungs. This is like a power workout for your lungs, because I'm going to be training a muscle which you don't train, you just use. So we use our cardiovascular system on the daily, but we don't train it, or rather, it's sort of an indirect training depending on what we're doing in the gym. But if you actually focus on it, the amount of output you can increase is crazy, and it can happen. You can do it as we're talking now. If I stop talking and you're talking, I can do a breath hold and I can do something and I can improve myself.
So it's accessible at any point.
It's accessible from the morning to the evening. It's accessible while you're asleep. I sleep with my mouth taped, so and I get a benefit from the way I sleep because I do that. That means that the next day I wake up more energized and I'm be able to give more from the first instance I wake up.
Okay.
So that's the simplest of things. I like to focus on a few pillars, which is we're talking about the sleep and exercise. There's the nutrition, but then there's also the community, the people you have around you, your support system. I think that's very, very important to not go about this world alone, but to understand your people, to understand who's your support system, because that is very important for us as humans. It's part of our genetic, not profile, but assimilation.
Yes, how we're built, how we're
Yes.
like from a neural point of view,
Exactly.
what gives us that feel good factor to not
Exactly.
complicate things.
And then there's also the purpose in life. What's your goal? For me, there's also an extra part which I would like to focus on more. Also, if we have the time to speak about it, is you can put it under the spiritual bracket. It also comes indirectly in the community bracket, but it's religion, religion and purpose in life. I think it's a missing link to so much of not just athletes, but the whole population, because it's a missing link towards happiness, a missing link in terms of clearing the anxiety and stresses of what we have in this world. Um, and I think it's something which is an untapped for maybe the wrong reasons, because we've been misdirected. I think it's very interesting to explore, and I would add it as one of the pillars.
Okay, and I know we've spoken before that for you, spirituality, religion, under whatever bracket we want to put it, is it's a huge part of your life and your career, and
Yes.
something that you kind of practice on a daily basis.
Yes.
And you feel that has given you personally a lot of value.
It has given me a lot of value. It has given me a lot of energy. It has taken away, cleared so much doubt in my life. It has taken me out of, I would say, verge of depressive states, and it has always come at the right moment.
Okay.
And I think I'm not here to advocate or for any religion or other. And I think this is also a very important point. Just like health is individualized and functional health is individualized, I think also religion must be individualized. So I'm not here to tell you, listen, go and follow this religion or that. I'm telling you, explore religion in the way you think you should, because I think it's something which has almost a magical touch which we're all missing.
Okay. I'm glad we got to explore that. It's something I really wanted to speak about as well, because I know it is a big part of your life.
Yes.
So obviously, I don't want to frame this into anything that's not you. It needs to be realistic and genuine, and I'm glad you've spoken about that. I'd like to move a little bit away from Zach as an individual and talk a bit about Zach as a holistic healthcare coach, and talk a bit about functional medicine and
Yes.
functional healthcare. It's a topic I'm very interested in, and I feel a lot of viewers who are looking at and watching this would be interested in as well. So I assume that the reason you started to explore holistic health is because you saw the benefits it had on you as an individual. I think as most of us do. Would you say that that's correct? Why did you go into that area?
Yes, half and half. So that's why I've continued to follow functional health, because I've seen the benefits after experimenting on myself, because I experiment everything on myself first, whether it's an exercise, whether it's a form of training, a concept, a recovery method, everything before I speak with other people, or advocate for it. But the trigger was losing a couple of family members, to the traditional medicine we're unfortunately all used to. So
Okay.
going to a doctor, getting pills for something which you don't need pills for, seeing family members popping pills like Skittles every morning, and then just seeing them deteriorate with no form of help whatsoever.
Okay. Let me ask you a hard question then. Do you feel that the traditional medical model that we currently follow of visiting a doctor, being given medication, which sometimes aids and sometimes covers up an issue, do you feel that the traditional model we're all kind of used to is not working for us? Is it,
It should be scrapped.
it should be scrapped, is your opinion?
Yes.
Okay.
We're far from it because of the way it's been built, from the way it's backed up. I'm not saying the doctors we have are incorrect, definitely far from it. There is the place for medicine, there is the place for the GP, there is the place for everyone. I think it needs to be more of an integrative approach. That is my opinion from my experience. Again, my my thoughts and my perspective from my experience. That's very important for me
Of course.
to iterate. I think it needs to be approached in a totally different way. The system as it is should be scrapped, and because once you go to a doctor and you go there with a few symptoms, you are no longer Zach Muscat. You are a headache. You are brain fog. You are some sort of disease. And we're all human. We're not a disease. We're not to be made
Into
or
a symptom
labeled
or diagnosis.
into these sort of boxes. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
I think it takes away a bit of the dignity as well. And then we're given something which should magically fix things. It seems to fix things for a while, and then things come back, and then you're never actually focusing on the root cause of what's going on.
Of course.
So that's still there. So you've been giving something extra, which might create different side effects, but the cause of what you have is still there, and we're not approaching it in the right way. So yes, I do think it needs to be
Needs to be changed.
needs to be
I
changed.
do feel we do kind of need to put the onus on us a little bit, on the individuals. And what do I mean by that? I feel by the point you do require a doctor. I mean, we're not speaking about the common cold or common maladies that we all get on a
Yeah.
day-to-day basis, but I do think we need to put our hand up and take a bit more responsibility for ourselves to some extent. We can't let ourselves degrade, degenerate, get sick, and then require the medical model.
Exactly.
What can we do before we get to that? Where is the preventative care? Where can we
Exactly.
really build a stronger version of ourselves from earlier on when we have the opportunity to do so? I feel what you're saying is very correct as well. That we do require the medical model to be there because it does save lives, and there are people who do
Definitely.
need an immediate intervention to help themselves.
Definitely.
But the same as when it comes to physiotherapy, if you've gotten to the point where you're injured, something has gone wrong already. What can we do not to get to that point? And it's the same with anything in the human body, I feel.
Of course. And I think you mentioned something for injury or physiotherapy. Same things for any sort of sickness or disease. Your body doesn't just receive something and decides, oh, okay, today we're going to be sick. It's something which has been happening over some sort of time, some sort of period of time, and you cannot take something which has been happening for, say, 3 months, a year, 5 years, and fix it in a day, or fix it with a magic pill. It doesn't work like that. The body doesn't work like that. Or rather, if you take something and take a magic pill in the morning, you can fix it for that 24 hours, but it's just going to come back.
Of course.
And I think it also comes down to the education. Nowadays, there's so much information, and we can access it in a way where we can be mindful and intelligent about it, and have all the tools to not find ourselves at a certain point. Yes, genetic profile has a huge impact. Not everyone has the facility to go out and have themselves tested and get the genetic profile and get what foods work and don't work. But there is enough information to start making waves and changing at least who can access the information and who can access the physical benefits. let's start and help those people. And like I said, then there are things which you can do for everyone, and let's find out what we can do for everyone and help everyone.
And again, the point of this conversation, let's educate about what actually will make a difference. Let's
Exactly.
try to clear all the noise, clear the cloud, as you like to say, and build a solid foundation first. I'd love to explore a concept a bit more, which is breathwork. I feel we haven't spoken about it enough, and I'll be very genuine and honest in saying it's something I'm only starting to learn about myself now through conversations with you and conversations with other athletes and practitioners. I want you touched upon a point before, and I want to see if I understood this correctly. So if I've come to you or we're in a group session and we're doing a breathwork session, is it very similar to me exercising in the gym in the sense of there's obviously the immediate benefits that I've exercised and I feel well, but then is it a concept of training as well, of progressive loading, of graded exposure into doing more and more? Is it that same concept as a metaphor?
100%. Your cardiovascular system, think of it just as any other muscle. So you're going to train it today, it's going to get fatigued, and then it's going to adapt. Same concept as any other muscle in the body. If you're going to go and do chest day, arms, back, legs, lungs, that's another day.
Okay.
Okay. So the only difference is that you don't need to go to the gym to do it. You don't need to have a gym membership to do it. You can do it at home.
Okay.
You can do it first thing in the morning when you wake up on your bed. You can do it at the office. You can do it on your way to the office, and it can be a powerful tool to break away anxieties, but also train and adapt. And I think it helps so many people. It's already helped many people, and I won't mention her name, but if she'll end up watching, I hope she does. She'll be smiling. I'm mentioning her name. So this week I was at a certain place, a class of I would say I was in a class setting, and she came up to me and said, after the session, she came up to me and said, listen, today was the first day in 25 years where I have not used my inhaler.
Wow.
And it was a moment where I was like, okay, why are you telling me? And how do I react? It's something so powerful. And the fact that she came to tell me and she's like, you had
Dramatic impact.
a bit of an impact on this. And I'm like, okay. It hit me. I was worried of having an overreaction or an underreaction. I wanted to compliment her. I wanted to be mindful of where she's come in 25 years to not use an inhaler for a workout we were doing in a class setting is something huge. So she had an issue, and she was basically realizing I was breathing incorrectly for my whole life. She snapped out of it. She started to train herself. Kudos to her for realizing and making the effort, and she's managed to come such a long way.
Wow.
And this is someone who's had to live with an inhaler for all their lives. 25 years, a lot of time. So yes, it can help so many people.
And how, let's say it's me, just to give a general example, how would one start? How would you start with breathwork? Do you just start a program? Do you build yourself a plan? What's the first step into exploring this area?
Okay, so the first thing is observation. So before we even actually go and do any programs, observation, understanding something as simple as setting an alarm 3-4 times a day on your phone, and that alarm just says observe, and you just observe what you're doing. Am I breathing from my nose? Am I breathing from my mouth? Do my shoulders move? Does my stomach move? And you just get a bit of an awareness to something you've been doing so long, automatically, because your body does it autonomously, and you start to understand, and you get that sort of relationship with this aspect of your life. And then from there we start to progress with basic exercises on just trying to focus on breathing through the nose as much as possible. It's not always possible in the first stages, but we build up to that. There's a form of testing to understand where each person is at their breathing capacity, because there have been studies which show that 80% of, the general population, but 80% of athletes breathe dysfunctionally.
Wow, 80% of athletes.
80% of athletes breathe dysfunctionally. So imagine how much of untapped gold there is there. Imagine you go to an elite athlete who's at the highest levels, and they're always looking for that extra 1%, which nowadays even a 0.1% can be differential in, for example, track and field. If you manage to tap into this, the changes and the benefits you get over your opponents is crazy.
Phenomenal. Well, I definitely think it's something that needs to be more in like mainstream media and something we need to be speaking more about, obviously built onto the other foundational pillars that we've discussed. Something I'm very interested in, probably if we look at it, because it's something I struggle with, but you obviously live a busy life, and whatever that means, you have a lot going on, you're very interested in many things, you're a high performer, and kudos on that, because obviously it's obviously something which gives you benefit and pleasure. Do you believe in this concept of balance in your life between your work, your preparation as an athlete? Do you ever switch off? Do you manage to relax? Do you find that balance between the two sides? Does work-life balance, whatever work and life means to you, exist?
Yes, that's the ideal. Okay, so there is balance, but you also have to watch out that you're not relaxing to a certain extent that you stop the adaptation. So there needs to be the balance, yes, but there also needs to be a continuous cycle of improvement in at least in what I do. So there needs to be a balance such that you're not reaching burnout, but it's not bad to be tired. It's not bad to be exhausted. I think it's also something where you might venture into burnout just to understand exactly where that is, so you can come back and approach it a different way.
Okay.
So yes, work-life balance is something which I've had to perfect, and I'm still perfecting. With every new input, I have to adapt, because if I have a 9 to 5 job and I've signed a contract for 5 years with the same company, that means I have a base and I can build on that. I mean, my contract can change every 6 months.
Of course.
I can be changing country every 6 months. So the input is always changing. So with the input comes the change of the work-life balance. I've also got a couple of courses I'm going through in the background at the moment. So yes, it comes to a point where I also like to keep active. I like different sports. I like to experiment. I make sure to meet my friends, which is something which I didn't used to do so much. I didn't understand the importance of community and support and friendship, something which I've learned in the last couple of years, I would say. And I make an emphasis for me to meet my friends on a regular basis, meet family on a regular basis, not just because obviously I love my family and friends, but I think I've also understood the benefit that I get from that. I'm very related to performance in everything I do. It needs to have an understanding. It needs to have a purpose. And I mean, at the back of my head, that I'm gonna see my parents, grandparents. I want to meet my friends, because I know that puts me at a level-headed place where I can approach my next goal in a different way. Whenever I've had any issues I've had a bad game, I've had
Self-doubt,
going
struggle,
down,
whatever.
going to the grandparents and sitting on their lap, and everything just goes away. So it's just understanding where your stresses dissolve, and inputting that into your day, so you don't need to have a high stress day all the time, and you can take it down and adapt in certain ways.
Yeah, I think the point you brought up at the beginning of this is so important, that at least what I've learned, and again, my opinion, but if you can cycle your life through periods of high stress and then allow yourself to come down a little bit to promote adaptation, the same as the physical body works, I'm sure that that's going to be the biggest and most powerful place for our brains as well. So how can we push that limit? How can we learn to adapt? And then in reality, the adaptation happens during the recovery time, during the time off. So let's optimize the recovery, and let's learn how to push ourselves in those high stress levels, I guess, as well.
Precisely. And you've mentioned the adaptation which comes in the recovery cycle. It's something I've understood coincidentally. So there have been times where I've pushed my body so much that I said, I literally can't push, or I was sick, or some sort of small injury which I tried to push through. and I had to stop. I had to stop. There was no other way for me to. And in the time, I said, okay, let me stop for 1 or 2 weeks. And in those 2 weeks, I still did not do anything, but I either studied or traveled or the benefits I saw after those 2 weeks meant I was now stronger in a better position than I was before I did this.
Of course, of course.
And there, I'm always trying to push, but I have to sometimes hold myself back for the purpose of feeling the benefits.
And if you were to, so just to kind of summarize this a little bit, if you were to really tell me about the three big things which help you in that recovery period, in that recovery patch, what would they be? What are the three main things that, it's obviously such a hard question to summarize, but people are going to listen to this hour-long conversation and say, what can I take away from it? So what would be the three things that you would have everyone do that are just like essentials?
I think you just the sleep is the top of the priority list. Make sure you're sleeping properly in an environment which promotes sleep, removing as many stressors as possible. The second would be the nutrition, because sometimes what can happen is when you relax in terms of performance, you say, okay, I don't need to eat as well, and that creates a sort of negative loop. And I think the third one, I think the most important one, is to find your happy place, your happy pill, something which makes you feel comfortable and clears away that stress. And that for me has been something which I've experienced lately and linked to nostalgia most of the time. So something which brings back childhood memories is going to clear away stresses.
Okay.
Because we when we were children, when we were kids, stresses were much less. And we didn't know actually what anxiety and stress was, or at least for the majority. And I think if you've managed to find something that transcends you back to your childhood, whatever that may be, I think that's very powerful. I think that creates a sort of foundation, removing the clouds and clearing the terrain, which makes you able to recover in such a better way than if you tell me, okay, I mentioned sleep, nutrition, okay, then I don't know,
Oh, but that's,
stretching
I
or
think
recovery, you know?
that's very powerful, and I think it's just it's such an interesting, different viewpoint to put that in there, and it's great to hear, and it is so powerful to find a place where we're comfortable, happy, and it's basically when you're switching off your brain from that, from like a high stress state, from a fight or flight into rest and digest state, and
Exactly.
if we can neurologically do that on demand, be
Exactly.
that spending time with family or in a place or time in nature, then that's super powerful. So the point of this whole conversation and everything we do with Rise is to try to give back, to educate, to help people build a better version of themselves and a happier life. And obviously, you are a pro footballer, it's something you're known about. And I'd love if you could give us one piece of advice to maybe a young athlete who's trying to turn pro. I mean, there's a lot of people pushing in that direction. What would your advice be as someone who's been there, who's been through it? And I'm sure with the value of foresight, you know more. You know what actually made a difference and what didn't. What would
Yes.
you tell that person?
I think I'll leave it till the end of this paragraph. So it's happened to me quite a few times, and on the other side of this, there's so much growth. There's so much understanding of yourself, of how many times you've been scared to go to this place, and how many times you've been told not to go there, how many times you've been constricted. And in my scenario, as a footballer, by coaches, peers, sometimes parents. Um, but on the other side of this, I think it's so powerful, the growth that you get personally and the faith you get in yourself. Um, it's happened on numerous occasions in my career related to football. I thought the world was going to crumble. I thought I was finished. And then came breakthroughs. Embrace failure. That for me is the most important message I can put out there, is embrace failure. On the other side of failure is growth and stratospheric improvement.
Wow.
Because you unlock yourself, you unlock the chains which have been holding you down on progressing and making that next step. So yeah, embrace failure.
Wow. And this definition of embracing failure, it means that when a challenge comes your way, almost say, thank you for the challenge. And it's a privilege to be here. It's a privilege to be under pressure and not to let it break you, and whatever that means, not to move into negative habits, to stop eating well, but to continue your positive routine and know that on the other side, on the flip side, the grass is greener and things are going to look better.
Precisely. And it comes with venturing outside of the comfort zone.
Okay. I think that's incredible. I have a few more questions to ask you, but I almost wish I could end there because that's fantastic. I do have, as we often do, a couple of just quick questions for
Okay.
you, which I'd like just like short, quick answers and see how what comes to mind. So, your most memorable match, so the biggest match of your career, what was that?
I guess now it's going to be 1-1 against Benfica in Estádio da Luz in Portugal, away. Huge match. We drew against Benfica, who were fighting for the league, and we were on the other side of the table. Had a match against Di Maria, so World Cup winner at that point, Otamendi World Cup winner. That was memorable, and the memory is still there. But I think there are so many points in my career where I thought I wasn't going to do it. I thought I can't make it. Actually, coming into mind now is the first match I played back in Akragas, which was my first team when I left from Malta. We had lost the match, but I called my parents crying, saying we lost, but I played really well. I can do this. So that's imprinted in my memory as a memorable match, which just not the supporters and the huge impact of the match, but just the fact that it gave me such a push.
Of course. Beautiful. Do you have any weird pre-game rituals? So anything that you do before a game? You've mentioned breathwork to me. You've mentioned some interesting stuff that I'm sure most players don't do. What's your game routine?
I don't think I have any weird things anymore. My pre-game routine now just includes listening to something which calms me down. Sometimes, or most of the time, it's some sort of gospel reading, gospel music, something which can ground me. And then I go into my breath work, which is I do a few breath holds to get me prepared for oxygen deprivation, which is going to happen during the match.
Of course.
That's basically my routine. No, not many superstitious.
Not the same underwear.
No. I've seen so many of those, but no, I haven't. I don't have.
I have to say, like through the length of my rugby career, I had the same pair of undershorts I always wore. I did normally manage to get them into the washing machine. There were a couple of times where I forgot to do so. That was a tough game, but
it dries off.
Okay, what's the most unexpected thing you've learned about your body? I'm sure from day one, from like 16-year-old Zach to here, there's a lot of insight. What have you seen has given you this huge difference? It's almost unfair that you know about it. What's like that big thing that you've learned about yourself?
I think we just went through it actually. That when I go through a cycle of stopping what I'm doing, I see the benefits of what I was doing before, and that's I'm 31 today. I figured it out when I was 29, 30. So
okay, well, a lot of benefit you can get from that,
yes,
to allow yourself the time to recover.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and just any mission that you're working on at the moment? I know you're working very hard at pushing towards a holistic health kind of certification and all-round certification. Is that the main thing that you're working on right now?
I think it's providing honest, individualized health information to every single person who comes across my path, and try and not only be someone who they can come to for help, but be the person to give tools to people to not need to come back to me.
Amazing.
So, my not motto, but my philosophy is a very bad business plan, because I want you to have all the information and all the tools to not come back to me.
Of course. It's one of the things we truly embrace at Rise, and it's something we speak about constantly. We want to teach our clients how to self-manage, how to ideally get out of that hole. And if someone has to come to us with exactly the same problem, we've probably failed them. So trust me, I think it is a beautiful business plan. I think that just through the honesty and through the referrals that those people are going to bring, you're going to do yourself a massive favor. Zach, thank you so much. That was an incredible conversation. I truly loved the moment where you said embrace failure, and how peaking and then giving yourself time to recover afterwards. It's just phenomenal. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation. And that was an incredibly insightful conversation for me. And I hope for you too, and everyone watching us as well.
I appreciate the time on this podcast, and the space and the questions, which made me go through a few memories as well. Keep doing this.
Thank you so much, Zach. Thank you so much. Amazing.